Hi, everyone, and welcome to Get Hired Live. I'm your host, Andrew Seaman, LinkedIn's senior news editor for job searches and careers. I'm so excited that you're joining us today. We're going to be talking all about job seeker confidence and really confidence in general. And there are so many of you already joining us. I want to say a quick hello to everyone. We have Jeanette from California, Christine from Dallas, Angelica from North Carolina, Paulo from San Diego, Cecilia from Argentina, Elizabeth from across the river from me in New Jersey, Kendall from New York, Gianna from Florida, Kirsten from Philadelphia, Raksha from France, Preston from Iowa, Ashley from Georgia, Pamela from South Carolina. So welcome to all of you. Obviously, we have people tuning in from all over the world. I want you to keep introducing yourselves, but I also want you to tell us a little bit about your job search or career journey. Maybe you want to change careers. Maybe you're looking for work. Maybe you've been looking for work. So just tell us really what journey you're on and then connect with each other, because networking and building relationships are the cornerstone of a successful job search. And there's no better time to start than right now. So maybe you see someone who is working in the area you want to work in, or maybe someone's struggling to get traction in the industry you already work in. Connect with each other, help each other out. Some of the best emails I get after these conversations are from people who've joined together and end up working on their careers and job searches together. And today, I hope you have a notepad or you have a little piece of paper out ready to learn a lot, because we have two incredible speakers today. I want to introduce Selena Rezvani, who is an author and self-advocate and leadership speaker. Welcome, Selena. And we also have Mel Robbins, who is a New York Times best-selling author and entrepreneur. So welcome to both of you.
Thanks
All
so
right.
much. Yeah, let's do this.
Let's do this. Looking for a job doesn't have to be boring. So we're going to make this really fun. All right, everybody, get ready.
Definitely. Well, and thank you both so much for joining us, and I hope people are following at the bottom of the screen, because we'll be flashing your LinkedIn profiles at the bottom. You both post such amazing content. So I really want to make sure people are following you and getting all of your pearls of wisdom. So, one of the things that I want to start off on is, job seeker confidence. People, they go into it sometimes feeling hurt, or, they're worried about the rejection. Mel, let's start with you. How can job seekers build confidence?
Okay, so this is kind of a big topic to unpack. And here's what we're going to do, everybody. I am going to make the things that you need to do to gain confidence simple, believable, and actionable. Because here's the bottom line. You're not going to get a new job by thinking about it. You have to take action. And that's good news, because you build confidence through action. So rule number one, Andrew, this is the definition of confidence that I want you to take away from our conversation. Confidence is the willingness to try. Confidence does not mean that you have this incredible rock star belief. Confidence does not mean that you are fearless and that you are never afraid or full of doubt. Confidence just means you're willing to try. Because if you are willing to take action and to try and to put yourself out there, every time you try, everybody, based on the research, this is called the confidence competency loop. Here's a little graphic. Every time you try, this is the action. Look, you're going to either succeed or fail. You're either going to get the interview or not. You're either going to get the job or not. You're either going to negotiate correctly or not. Even when you fail, you always learn something. And in the learning, in the growing, you gain what researchers called competence. And when you start to feel more competence because you tried, you will feel less nervous and you'll keep trying again. And the reason why this is a loop is because this is how you build momentum. And there's one final piece about this, everybody. This is not just common sense that you got to focus on the actions that you're going to take. There's also a mindset piece to this that's grounded in really important research from Yale and Harvard and UCSF. And that is something called belief effects. What they found in research is if you believe that the actions that you're taking will have a positive impact on either getting a job or getting a better salary or losing weight or any kind of change you want to make. What we know based on research is believing the actions work create a greater result than just trying it and not knowing or thinking that maybe this won't work. You got to anchor down on positive belief that I'm going to try. And if I try, I will be rewarded, because you will.
Yeah, no, I think that's fantastic advice. And Selena, this is also an area of your specialty. Self-advocacy is a huge thing as a job seeker. And what are your suggestions for job seekers who are out there and saying, listen, I don't really have the confidence. I want to try, but I worry about things. What do you suggest they do to build confidence?
Yeah, well, look, like Mel said, you don't need LeBron James level confidence to do this well. So realize that. But you do need to signal self-belief in your candidacy, and you need to be able to back yourself when somebody's a little skeptical about your candidacy or asking you the tough questions. So one of my favorite techniques in teaching this, and in my LinkedIn learning course too, is focus on what you can control. There's some things we can't control in that job interviewing process, but there's plenty we can. Our preparedness, our research into the company, tapping our network to see what contacts we know there, even rehearsing some of the questions that we know we're going to be asked. So that's a huge thing. Focus on what you can control. That's a huge confidence lever. And look, isn't it true, when we really know our stuff, we sit up a little taller, we speak with more conviction. That's something under our influence. So know what those things are, invest the time in those.
Yeah, I think that is fantastic advice. And it's one of those things, a lot of people, especially during the new year, where they say, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to get 3 interviews a week. You can't control that. And so
Right.
You're almost setting yourself up for failure. And I have another question, but quickly, I just want to say hello again to everyone joining us. Karen from Colorado, Jane from Minnesota, Eleni from San Antonio, Sarah from Indiana, Teresa from Arizona, Michaela from Florida, Emily from Hawaii, Alicia from Tanzania, Karen from Chicago, and Michelle from South Africa. Welcome to all of you. We have Mel Robbins and Selena Rizvani joining us, talking about job seeker confidence. And Mel, the next question, and you mentioned that you need to try. But one of the things that comes with job searching is almost inherent rejection. You may be turned down for a job. You may be implicitly turned down for a job. Yes.
No, seriously, thank God. If they're not hiring you, you would have been miserable there, everybody.
Yeah,
like
literally thankful for the no's.
Yeah, you got to be thankful for the no's. So here's a couple key takeaways based on research, everybody, that will also kind of help you put what Selena's talking about into action, and it will also help you ride the up and down of the wave. So first things first, you have to manufacture the belief. I don't care if you write it on a Post-it note, if you put it on your fridge, you have to manufacture the belief that if you put in the work, you will find and land the perfect job for you right now. So how do you do that? And you anchor that out into kind of a couple key takeaways. So I'm going to give you 3 things that I want you to do, because looking for a job, everybody, it feels personal, but it's not. It is a professional numbers game. And when it comes to numbers, if you want to really be able to turn this into something that doesn't feel so personal, create a formula. What is a formula of actions that you need to take every week that are under your control, that you believe if you were to do these actions every single week for the next 3 to 6 months, and I'm saying 3 to 6 months because I'm a realistic optimist, even though this is the best job seeker market literally in like the last 40 years, what are the actions you need to take? How many resumes do you send? How many hours do you send in, or companies you need to research? How many weak contacts do you need to make contact with? How many follow-up emails do you need to send? What are the actions you need to take every week that you believe if you were to just manage those actions, that's your formula for 3 to 6 months. You believe if you did that, you would land a job. That's number 1. Number 2, I want you to focus on developing skills. What we know is that skills make a difference. And LinkedIn has all kinds of incredible courses that they have unlocked for you. And it's not just the hard skills like project management. Believe it or not, The people that are getting hired based on research are also strengthening the soft skills. And LinkedIn's got your back, everybody. They've identified the top 10 soft skills. They have courses on them. These are things you can put on your resume. And also, the third thing you need to be doing, and I know you're not going to do this, you must practice interviewing. Because if you get to the interview, chances are they've already decided that you've got enough of the hard and soft skills on paper to do the job. Now they're just trying to figure out if they actually want to be with you online or in a hybrid situation every week. And if you show up and you're bumbling your answers and you're nervous and you're acting like a freak because you haven't practiced and now you're nervous, you have blown it. And so you got to practice interviewing with your friends, with a mentor. If you get the interview, don't you dare walk into that interview that you earned and blow it because you didn't practice.
Yeah, no, that is completely fair, because a lot of people, I think they just think they're going to waltz in there and sort of spitball everything. But really what happens is they ask you a question and you start going, and then it's almost like a cascade effect. Things just keep falling down around you. So I think that is incredibly great advice. And Selena, for people who, they say they get a rejection or two, and like Mel said, this might take you several months up, and average is usually about 4 months in a good market, I think. That's the statistic. So Selena, what should people do if they start getting beaten down by those rejections?
Well, I can empathize. And I know sometimes when you don't have confidence, like nothing feels further away, than having it. So I can certainly empathize. But what I would say is, back to what you can control, I would compensate with those rejections by expanding your pool of what you're applying to. One of the mistakes I see people make, Andrew, is that they're overly precise in their job search. And, look, for most people who are successful in searching for jobs, it is a numbers game. And you need to put some volume out there in terms of applications to, get a response and get some interviews. So there are a few benefits of thinking more open-mindedly about what you're applying for and casting that wider net. You're going to get more callbacks and interviews. You're going to get more practice, interviewing and talking about yourself and your interests and your value and what you can do. And the other thing that doesn't hurt is you can then honestly share with employers, I'm in some other rounds of interviews with other organizations, right? All of this works to your advantage and helps you and gives you leverage. So don't be so perfectionist, that it has to tick 10 out of 10 boxes.
Yeah. And would you say then, so if I'm understanding you correctly, Selena, you're basically saying, if you do get that no, if you get that rejection, take what you can learn from it then, right?
Absolutely. Take what you can learn from it, ask for feedback. It doesn't mean you're going to get it in every situation, but certainly if you can ask for some feedback about your candidacy or why they went with a different candidate, or even tap your network, and use them as a sounding board. I've found with some of my own rejections and no's I've gotten in my own career, tapping my network is often what helped me normalize that rejection, and not get sidelined by it. So no good self-advocate is an island.
Yeah.
Use your network.
Definitely. And, again, I just want to welcome everyone who's watching us. We're talking about job seeker confidence with Mel Robbins and Selena Rezvani. If you have any questions, we're going to be getting to them in just a bit. So make sure you're plugging them into the comments because we're going to be getting to them in just a few minutes. And the next thing I wanted to ask about was, a lot of people, part of the confidence game is asking for what you deserve in the job market. And some people, they get maybe a salary that's a little bit above what they expected, and they're like, great. And they just say yes to everything. But, what is your suggestion, Mel, for people who say, hey, listen, I don't want to be, I don't want to seem too greedy. What's your suggestion for them to get what they want and get their fair share in the negotiation process?
Okay, I got a couple things to say about this. And the first thing is, a company and a job is not your family or your friend. You're going to meet people there who will be your friends, but it is a financial transaction. It is a professional environment. And somebody is going to pay you money to perform services and to lend your talent and skills so that they can make money. And so get your head around the fact that if somebody has gotten to the point where they're negotiating with you, number one, they want you. Number two, you have something that they need. And number three, you don't have a right to complain or gripe about how much you make unless you ask for what you think you deserve. That's number one. Number two, if you've gotten to the table where you're now negotiating, it's going to cost an employer. And look, I am an entrepreneur, a serial entrepreneur. It's going to cost an employer more money to spend time looking for somebody else now that they're in negotiation with you than to give you a little bit more money that you ask for. And so you are leaving money on the table. We have all had that moment at a restaurant, right? Where you go to put a tip down and you're even being generous. And then you realize, oh my God, I put a 20 on the table. Why? And you take it back. You're still leaving like a 25% tip. Don't leave money on the table. Okay. Always ask for more money. That's rule number one when you get to that. Number two, being hesitant is normal, everybody, especially for women. I got to pull out some research here because I want you women out there to understand something very specific, grounded in the research. If a man is fired, he typically bounces back stronger. And the reason why is when men get fired, they point at the job and say the job was a jerk. They feel frustrated and then they get right back at it. We women, based on the research, we typically see, brace yourselves, everybody, a salary decrease by an average of 24%. Why? Because unlike many men who go, forget that job, we turn it back on ourselves and feel sad and embarrassed and like we screwed up. So if you're in a situation where you're furloughed or laid off and you are saying, Mel Robbins, that's me. My God, I got laid off in 2020, like so many people did. And then I took the first thing I could find because I had to, and it was a huge salary decrease. And now I don't even know because here's what I'm here to tell you. Okay. You got to get control of this. There are 6 things, everybody, that you need to negotiate because rule number one, when somebody's offering you the job, they want you. You are now in the power position, everybody. The 6 things that you need to negotiate. Number one, your salary. And yes, always ask for more. What are they going to say? No or yes. Either way, you got to ask because it signals that you want more. Number 2, your start date. Maybe you need some flexibility on your start date. Number 3, you got to negotiate your title. Number 4, if you're senior enough and you have a team, look at the team. Do you have enough resources? Make sure you negotiate whether or not you need more resources allocated for you to do your job. Number 5, these are the benefits and the flexibility that we're all seeking in these days. And number 6, and this is something that nobody asked for. I want you to ask for this. Ask to be assigned someone in the company several rungs higher than you to be your mentor for the first year with the expectation that they will meet with you once a quarter. Because women in particular make their bosses their mentor, which becomes a massive block for your progression. You ask and negotiate for those 6 things, you are putting yourself in a position to be paid what you deserved, paid what you really feel good about, and to set yourself up for success.
Yeah. And I've heard of people who do that actually, where they end up saying, hey, listen, okay, you can't meet my salary by a few thousand. Let me have lunch with the COO twice a year or something like that. And for those people, they have someone at the top who say, hey, I know a guy or I know a girl who, they work in accounts or something like that, but they would be great for this position. And it's really paid off for the people who have done that. And, Selena, is your advice for people who, they sort of don't want to ask for that, or they have that little thing inside of them that says, don't ask for too much. This is going to ruin the opportunity. What is your advice for sort of building that courage and that fire to say, you know what, I deserve this amount of money. I deserve these benefits.
Yeah, I'd say, and a lot of us can relate to that hesitation, but I would say give yourself license and give yourself permission to do this. If there were ever a carpe diem time to make a bold request of employers, it's now. You already have leverage. the question you need to figure out is what it is. What are your bargaining chips? If you are doing managing a product or service very similar to the one you would take on in this new role, you have a lot of bargaining chips. You are a known entity in many ways to this organization and less of a risky hire. You have to push that advantage forward, right? And really know that. I would say another important thing for you to think about is, yes, the bread and butter kind of elements of a job offer are important, like your salary and the benefits that come along with it. But make sure there's growth in that opportunity. It's a good role if there's stretch in it. I used to have a little dachshund on my desk, right, that reminded me to stretch. But that's something you should be negotiating for. I think the one other thing that's kind of come to the forefront more this last few years is it a values match? Does that organization kind of live what they espouse? Do the leaders live it? Do they keep their promises? That's something else you want to look at in your research to make sure there's a values match there, that this is an organization you're proud to be part of.
Yeah. And one of the best things that I always like to see is when people reach out to someone within the organization and say, hey, listen, I love the company. I love all the window dressing you have on your website, but can I talk to someone on the inside to see if they can tell me what it's actually like, or, what the leaders actually believe? Because those diversity statements or environmental commitments, they're obviously usually worked by a team of marketing professionals. So it's always great to get the inside story about what is it actually like inside. So I think that's really fantastic advice. And we have so many questions coming in. I want to make sure we get to them. So keep them coming. And the first one is from Lisa. And Lisa says, a big confidence killer during my job search has been the endless rejection. What advice do you have for overcoming rejection, especially when you don't receive any feedback from the hiring manager? And Mel, why don't we start with you?
So I want to go back to some of the advice I said earlier. Go back to creating a formula so that you're anchoring down on the fact that this is a numbers game. Okay. Second thing is when you focus on the actions, it's going to feel a little less personal. And the final thing that I would say is that if you're casting too wide of a net, you're going to get more generic interviews and you're going to get a less personal experience. I personally think it's important to go deeper rather than wider. I think it's really important for you to do some soul searching about what you actually want to be doing and spend more time researching jobs. And more importantly, instead of pinging that little job icon on LinkedIn, get into that search bar, because the majority jobs, they're actually not published. They're filled by word of mouth. And here's a really interesting statistic, everybody. 28% of people find a job through a friend of a friend. We call this a weak tie. And so I guarantee you're not doing enough of the upfront to connect yourself into the kinds of jobs that are a match. If you're continuing to get rejected, you're going to double down on the formula of actions. B, you're going to use that mantra I said earlier, which is thank God they didn't hire me, because clearly that was not a job that's meant for me. And you're going to put your head back down and put in the work. You're going to double down on research and on looking at the wider net of weak ties, friends of friends of friends. That is going to help you build momentum, because the truth is it always hurts to be told no. And it's going to sting for a little bit. Go complain about it with somebody, have a great night, and then tomorrow morning, after you shake it off, get back to work, because it is not personal. It's a numbers game.
Yeah. And I have to say, looking back on my career, the no's, they stick out, but at the same time, I'm so grateful that they were no's, because it led me to where I am today. And I'm so much more happy here than I probably would have been if they said yes and I went after those opportunities. So I'm really grateful, actually, for those no's. And Selena, we have a question here, and I think this applies to so many people. And there are similar questions from Marcelo and Angie about career gaps. And when you come back from a career gap, you might be a little bit behind in your experience. Maybe you are missing a few skills that other people have that have stayed in the workforce. What is your suggestion for overcoming maybe the hit of confidence that comes with having a career gap? And how do you overcome that in your job search, in your cover letter, your resume, and how do you sell yourself to an employer?
Yeah, I love this question. So thank you, Marcelo and Angie, for asking. I think one of the things is to speak confidently about your gap or your timeout. I've heard some people refer to it as a sabbatical, whether or not it was formally that. I think speaking in decisive, clear language that shows you back yourself in terms of the fact that you left or re-entered at the time that you did matters. I think you can emphasize your transferable skills. There are things that are applicable that you managed, led, oversaw, supervised, did, that I can guarantee matter in your role, right? That you're looking at and being considered for. So I think a lot of it is mindset and not coming at it in this apologetic way, or somehow, I don't know, inferring that you're damaged goods, because really, it's the opposite. I think you need to show what you can offer. You need to show them what transfers. And I think you need to stand behind some of your decisions too. Lots of people have off-ramped and re-entered successfully, and you can even point right to some of those success stories.
Yeah. And I assume don't bring it up really unless they do, but just basically tell the truth when they do say, hey, I see that there were about 3 years here that you didn't have a job. So is that sort of the suggestion?
Yeah, and I'd be really ready for that question. Like you said, I think you don't need to bring it up or keep signaling to that time necessarily. But I do think I'd be ready with a short elevator pitch of what that time meant in your life and how it's led you to this next natural step.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And Mel, we have a question here that I think is just really important, and a lot of people deal with this. It's from Nicola. How do you ask for a raise when there hasn't been any organization-wide, including cost of living?
Okay. I need to underscore something, everybody. Whether you're confident or insecure, this applies to all of you. You are in the single best job market in the last 40 years. Period. And so you're in the driver's seat. To add on to what was just discussed about those of you with a gap, the research shows employers are not concerned about it right now because everybody's had a reshuffle in the last couple of years. So get on Zoom with your friend, record the session, practice answering the question, watch yourself back. And Selena's right. Have a confident 1-sentence or 2-sentence answer. And the second thing for those of you that are concerned about age or a gap in your resume, double down on skills. It's going to build confidence. LinkedIn has got all these free courses to help you with the soft skills that matter to most employers more than the hard skills, unless we're talking about a technical job. Now, as far as and look, I'm 53. The question you just asked me, Andrew, just blew right out of my mind. So ask me the question quickly again.
No worries. It's from Nicola. And basically, how do you ask for a raise?
Oh, great. Okay. So you know how when you're leaving a company, there tends to be an exit interview? Employers understand, even if your employer is not the greatest employer in terms of the way that they're managing you, people at the top understand that it is an incredible market. They understand that there's a great reshuffling. We know that 60% of people right now are thinking about leaving their jobs. So I want you to set up what we call a stay interview, which is an interview about what you need in order to feel that there is a future here for you. Because here's a fact. It will cost your employer 30% of your salary to replace you in terms of the time that it spends to recruit somebody, the resources to interview them, the time that is lost to onboard them. So there is a benefit to an employer wanting to incent you to stay. You have experience that they're going to have to train somebody else in terms of the fact that they've been with you, they've been in the culture, they have that is valuable in a market like this. That's number one. Number two, if you ask for that meeting because you want to be more engaged and you want to contribute more and you want to see a future here for you, and your employer does not giddy up and make that meeting happen and actually listen with earnest and work with you on a plan, that is not a place that you should be staying, because that is not an employer who is invested in your future. And this, again, back to something I said earlier, this is not, I don't ever want to hear you say, my job is like my family. No, they're not. Your job is a financial transaction with boundaries where somebody is paying you for your expertise, for your time, for your energy, so that they can make money or provide a service. And so there is value in the fact that you have tenure in that company, and there is value in you actually raising your hand and say, hey, I'm interested in the long term here, but I'm seeing a lot of jobs. What is my future here?
And I know a few people who they've said, oh, well, I was going on a business trip and I made sure I stayed in the cheapest hotel and all this stuff because, I'm doing them a solid. I'm like, why? and it's one of those things, like you said, they're not your family. And if the executives are staying in nice hotel rooms, if other people are, don't sell yourself short. It's not, you're not going to, get bonus points because you went through a miserable experience for them. And Selena, we have a question here that I think is really great, and it applies to a lot of people. And it's from Suzanne, who says, how do you handle imposter syndrome? I have extremely strong skills and have been with the same company for a very long time. I'm also female and don't do a good job promoting myself.
I feel like you ripped the words right out of my own mouth. And imposter syndrome has been a big struggle in my own life. And one of the hardest things has been finding some real confidence. So I'm right there with you. And I would say there's a few things. One is to expect some imposter syndrome. I've had the pleasure, like Andrew, of interviewing lots of people. And it's amazing how many people will say, yep, I've experienced that. So I think see it as something you should expect as part of leveling up and kind of pushing yourself to grow and try something new and potentially scary. That way you can kind of greet it with a little understanding. Another change that's really helped me with this to earn some solid confidence has been moving from a kind of biting inner critic voice to more of a coach voice. Right? It's really hard to telegraph confidence to the world if there's like nothing but trash talk in your head, right? It's really hard to overcome that. So making that shift from inner critic, mine was named Marjorie, okay, to more of this friendly coach. What would a friendly coach say to you? They'd say, "Oh, I saw what you did in there. I liked how you raised X topic." Or, they might say, "Hey, I liked when you told X anecdote. Next time, try it this way," right? You can work with that. And I find it builds your confidence when you adapt and adopt that voice. Another thing you can do is kind of shrink some of your goals. Shrink some of your goals, instead of giving yourself this Mount Everest sized goal, that means I did a good job. That means I'm winning. How can you make that a little bit smaller? Some of these things are mindset shifts, but look, like Mel said, this is an incredible job market. Instead of seeing yourself as the selectee, like this poor kid that's like waiting to be picked for a kickball team, see yourself as a selector. You are like a co-leader in this interview process and in this decision. So don't just see yourself as that selectee. I find that can help move you from kind of feeling more passive to feeling more like this active creator in your own life.
I think that is fantastic advice. And I think everyone knows that Marjorie, no offense to the Marjories who are out there, but I think everyone sort of knows that person. And, I think we have time for another question, and this one I think is a great one to end on, and I'd love to hear from both of you. It's from Jacqueline, and how do I determine what my next steps are for a change in my career? And I think a lot of people are at this moment where they say, I want something different, but I don't know what. What's your advice for people who maybe find themselves in that position? Mel?
A couple things. What you're talking about is that you're lacking self-awareness and clarity about what actually you value. And so I think before you like just kind of spread resumes all over the planet, you should look inward. And there's a fantastic test that a really good friend of mine, Jonathan Fields, created called Sparketypes. And it is a test that you can take for free. I believe it's at sparketypes.com. I'm sure they'll put the link in. In fact, LinkedIn might even have articles about it that really investigates what kind of work makes you come alive and what role in the way that that work is created really is fulfilling innately for you. And when you start to have greater self-awareness about what you like and what you don't like, that's going to help you direct where you pivot next. And, if you're an entrepreneur watching this and you're kind of watching this from the employer side, for me personally, what I look at is where is there friction in my business, in the process, in how I feel? What are the tasks or the kind of work that literally I can feel in my body? That is the most accurate sign that it's not the kind of thing that you should be doing. You want to identify what you naturally like to do. You want to double down on those things that bring you joy, because what we know based on the research is that you are more productive, you are more effective, and you make more money when you enjoy what you're doing. And when you figure that out, my advice is, if you're also exhausted by the industry you've been in, pivot to one of the emerging industries, particularly if you're going to focus on skills like project management or soft skills, many of which LinkedIn are giving you courses on. Cryptocurrency, NFT, these jobs weren't even available to you 2 years ago. And now these are sectors that are exploding. And for those of you that are like, what about ageism? That's only a problem if in your mindset, if you think it's a problem. Maturity and expertise is a huge value add to we employers. Play to that strength, not necessarily in the industry that you've been in, but in the core skills that transfer that you've been doing for 20 years. If you can manage logistics in a warehouse, you can help with project management at an emerging tech company or NFT market. Yeah, you may have gray hair. So do I. I just happened to have dyed it 2 weeks ago. Doesn't mean you have to dye your hair. It means you got to double down on your skills and on what you really want to do. Because at the end of the day, you just want to be happy, right? You want to be able to walk into work and feel like you're walking into a place where you enjoy what you're doing. You're working on something that's meaningful because you can contribute, and the people there appreciate that you are there today. That's the formula for a good job. And there's nothing holding you back but your actions and your attitude from doing the work to figure it out and go get it.
Yeah, and you don't have to hate your job. I think that's the key thing. And you don't have to love the one that makes you miserable, but you don't have to be in a job that you don't love or that you hate. So I think that's such an important takeaway. And Selena, what is your advice for people who feel they're at a crossroads?
Yeah, I would say do the work first. I think you have a vague target, you're kind of going to have vague results. So I'd hate for you to go through promoting yourself and putting yourself out there if you don't quite know what you want. I think you can, if you can't access an assessment for some reason, do the work of asking yourself, what makes me happy and occupied? When I'm alone and by myself, what really gives me that? I even like to ask the question, the inverse of that. What do I gripe to people about? What do I complain about that I don't like in my job and go on about? What are the conditions or the setup that's going to give me more of the good stuff and help me avoid, some of what's lacking. I think the important part is don't settle for suboptimal. It can be really easy to do that sometimes. I've heard job seeking, it's kind of like buying a house, right? You have your wish list of what you want, but usually you have to sacrifice or be ready to compromise something. And I think that's still true, but it's changing and things are more in your favor, job seekers. So this is your time to make those bold requests.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Selena. Thank you so much, Mel. I wish we could keep going, but I really appreciate your time. And like I said, I hope everyone was following at the bottom of the screen and following you on LinkedIn.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Go get them.
Yeah. Thank you. And be sure to follow both of them because they have such great tips. And I especially love Mel's 5-second rule. It's really such a great concept and something that I always encourage people to follow. So be sure to check both of them out on LinkedIn and other social media. And I want to remind you to stay tuned to the LinkedIn news page because we have so much coming up, including today at 1:30 p.m. Eastern time. My colleague Nina Melendez will be talking to my other colleague, Juliette Farreau, who is an associate editor here at LinkedIn. They'll be discussing this year's Jobs on the Rise list, which is the 25 fastest growing jobs in demand. Nina will also talk with Rodrigo Puga, who is the vice president of global talent solutions at Pfizer, a little company you might have heard of, about how to get one of these emerging jobs. Again, that's today at 1:30 p.m. Eastern time. And we also have a new show, another show coming up tomorrow, and that is with my colleague Caroline Fairchild, who will be talking with Tammy Sun, who is the co-founder and CEO of Carrot Fertility, about the changing landscape of employee benefits and how employers are putting women first. Again, that's tomorrow, January 20th at 3 p.m. Eastern time. So be sure to tune in to both of those. And again, I want to thank you all for joining us. We have these conversations regularly, so be sure to check back soon. And I always want to end by thanking the people who make this show possible behind the scenes. We have Taisha, we have Wes, we have Derek, we have Gianna, we have Steven, we have Dave, we have Flo, we have Madison. There is a whole army back there. So thank you to all of them. And remember to take care of yourselves. There's obviously still a pandemic going on. You can't get hired. You can't be a good candidate if you're not healthy and well enough to do so. So take care of yourself. And until next time, best of luck.